Vladimir, stop is President Donald Trump's message to Russian President Vladimir Putin after Putin has unleashed an attack on Kyiv, Ukraine's capital, the largest attack that has happened in the capital of Ukraine in about a year. But before we look at that, please be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, share with someone who's into politics, and comment down below. Let me know what you think about this story. So we'll head on over here to PBS News, where it says, biggest Russian attack on Kyiv since last summer leaves 12 dead. Russia pounded Kyiv with an hour-long barrage of missiles and drones Thursday, killing at least 12 people in its deadliest assault on the Ukrainian capital since July, and drawing a rare rebuke of Moscow from Donald Trump just as peace efforts were coming to a head. The attack kept residents on edge for about 11 hours, with many staying awake all night while loud explosions reverberated around the city and flashes of light punctuated the sky. Families gathered in public air raid shelters, some of them bringing cats and dogs. The strikes that began around 1 a.m. hit at least 5 neighborhoods and heavily damaged multiple residential buildings. Around 90 people were wounded. President Vladimir Zelensky said he would cut short his official trip to South Africa and return home as the city reeled from the bombardment. It appeared to be Russia's biggest attack on Kyiv in 9 months, and Zelensky called it one of Russia's most outrageous. So now we'll look at President Donald Trump's response to this attack, with Donald Trump saying, "I am not happy with the Russian strikes on Kyiv. Not necessary and very bad timing. Vladimir, stop. 5,000 soldiers a week are dying. Let's get this peace deal done." My first thought on this is, geez, imagine if Biden had thought of that, telling Vladimir Putin to just stop. Trump is such a genius. I can't believe that Biden never thought that telling Vladimir Putin, a bloodthirsty, murderous dictator, Putin stop on social media was going to bring this war to a grinding halt somehow. It doesn't appear that is going to be what's going to happen, unfortunately. Trump even had the complete audacity to claim that Russia and Ukraine both want peace just hours after this awful attack unfolded, saying in a press conference today that he thinks that Russia still is seeking a peace solution somehow, even after attacking Ukraine overnight.
As your president on Russia, do you still believe that Putin is serious about peace given the events overnight in Ukraine? And if that bombing doesn't end, are you considering new sanctions on Russia?
So we are thinking that very strongly that they both want peace, but they have to get to the table. We're waiting a long time. They have to get them to the table, and I think we're going to get peace.
Now what we have is a editorial that is blasting Donald Trump's negotiation strategy when it comes to the Ukraine-Russian war, and really lambasting his proclivity to give more slack to Russia than to Zelensky. So let's head on over here to Mediaite. It says, very dangerous. National Review rakes Trump over the coals for trying to get Ukraine to surrender to Russia. And you guys should go and read this full article. It's really good. I'll read some excerpts of it here. National Review raked President Donald Trump over coals over his attempt at forcing Ukraine to accept an unfavorable peace deal with Russia, in an editorial published on Thursday, warning of the very dangerous future he might create. On Wednesday, this is just yesterday, okay, before these attacks came down, but just yesterday, Trump laid into President Zelensky, writing the following in a post on Truth Social. Zelensky is boasting on the front page of the Wall Street Journal that Ukraine will not legally recognize the occupation of Crimea. There's nothing to talk about here. This statement is very harmful to the peace negotiations with Russia. in that Crimea was lost years ago under the auspices of Obama and is not even a point of discussion. Nobody is asking Zelensky to recognize Crimea as Russian territory, but if he wants Crimea, why didn't they fight for it 11 years ago when it was handed over to Russia without a shot being fired? The area also houses, for many years before the Obama handover, major Russian submarine bases. It's inflammatory statements like Zelensky's that make it so difficult to settle this war. He has nothing to boast about. The situation for Ukraine is dire. He can have peace, or he can fight for another 3 years before losing the whole country. I have nothing to do with Russia, but have much to do with wanting to save on average 5,000 Russian and Ukrainian soldiers a week who are dying for no reason whatsoever. The statement made by Zelensky today will do nothing but prolong the killing field, and nobody wants that. We are close to a deal, but the man with no cards to play should now finally get it done. I look forward to being able to help Ukraine and Russia get out of this complete and total mess that would have never started if I were president. So we've gone from, the war would never have started in the first place if Trump was president instead of Biden, to that Trump would be able to solve the war in 24 hours if he was to be reelected, which he has been, and he definitely has not been able to negotiate a deal in this war. So, maybe Trump doesn't have as much power in his negotiating ability in this conflict as he thinks he does. And maybe, just maybe, he's being manipulated by Putin quite a bit here. So that's Trump's kind of thinking on Zelensky. And now we'll look at some analysis of this editorial's kind of their analysis of Trump's stance. On the face of it, the members of the Trump administration who set out their ideas for the basis of a peace agreement between Russia and Kyiv appear to know as little about deal making as they do about diplomacy as they do about Russia. Wow. The suggestion that Ukraine should legally cede Crimea to Russia, something that had not been on the table before, does nothing other than strengthen Moscow's negotiating position while sending a terrible message to both Kyiv and European members of NATO, a message that will not be overlooked by China or those threatened by it. Kyiv has rejected the idea, and the peace process, such as it is in disarray. It began before warning Trump that Vladimir Putin would not see recognizing Crimea as a goodwill gesture. Russia would not see it as a goodwill gesture, but they will see it as an admission of weakness. The piece went on to argue that Trump has forfeited leverage to Russia before concluding, if the administration, which has foolishly muddied the waters with its belligerent talk about Canada and Greenland, not to speak of slinging matches over X with Zelensky, a practice both sides should cease, is not serious about continuing to stand up for the very basic principle that countries should not invade their neighbors, then the world, not just Ukraine, will face a very dangerous future. Yes, because let's remember, Putin gave his evil speech back in February of 2022 when they invaded and said that he wants to rebuild the entire USSR. And what you have is other countries that used to be a part of the USSR who have now seceded and are their own independent countries, who are looking at this conflict and going, if Ukraine is to fall and there's not a strong negotiation that guarantees Ukraine's peace, what's going to happen is that if a deal's made that is favorable to Putin, Putin will bide his time during any peace deal and use that time to retool his army, replenish his supplies, and go at it again years down the line. And this is simply an unacceptable position. This is why, Trump mentioning Crimea is so disastrous, because if the precedent is set that Crimea is Russian territory and that Zelensky has to recognize it as such, then that's going to make Putin even more bloodthirsty. It's going to make it seem like this whole special military operation was a success and motivate him to potentially continue to attack further west into Europe and perhaps even attacking a NATO country. And in that article that talks about the deficiencies in Donald Trump's strategy when it comes to Ukraine and Moscow, it mentions the deal between South Korea and North Korea, where basically they're still technically on a ceasefire. That war is still technically going, but it ended in there's a peace agreement that was entered in the 1950s that has held up until today. And what that has allowed is South Korea to, in the meantime, build up its economy, build up its democracy, build up its military, and become a country that is much more formidable on the global scale and has deterred any sort of North Korean aggression just based on their growth. And I hope and I have a vision that there can be some sort of peace agreement entered to where Russia doesn't just suddenly get a whole bunch of land in Ukraine, and that Ukraine can rebuild the land that it still holds on to in its country, and hopefully become stronger, a stronger democracy, a stronger economy, and build up their military, and hopefully keep Putin at bay from entering a larger conflict that spreads on over into the west of Ukraine. So that's all I got for you guys in this one. Thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to like the video, subscribe, share it, and have a great rest of your day. Take care.